Hey guys, Gary here. So, if you remember last video, we started on this config class. Right now it's fairly basic. Uh, this function right here should have been private, first off, right? And if we look at our get, right, we're throwing an error saying trying to load unknown configuration config, right? We'll end up replacing that real soon, probably next week when we start handling our new debugging system for this framework, because we're going to go a little bit further with debugging. So if we look at this file path and things like that, what we notice here is when we load a configuration file, each one of these has to be a full configuration file. I don't want that. What I want to do is I want to merge those configuration files together, right? I want to have one big configuration file and only define the differences in the environment specific configurations. So how do we do that? So if we look at that, we can rename this variable to environment file path, and then we can move this variable up, and we can rename that to global file path, right? So if we move this, and we can say if file exists, and then we say environment file path, right? And then we can say and file exists. Global file path, right? So we can do one thing there based off of this this configuration, right? And then we can say else if the file exists for the environment, and else the file exists for the global, right? That's great. That's all fine and dandy. So if we look at this else here, we can put that die trying to load unknown great. That works. So what do we want to do in the situation that only one of the others found? Well, we want to do the same thing that we were doing before, but we need to change the variable itself, right? So we'll go ahead and change this variable, right? Now, what do we want to do if both are found, though? So we need to somehow go ahead and get the configuration over here, but we need it in an array, right? So we can say environment config equals this JSON decode, right? And the difference here is we need an array, and so we'll pass down true, right? And then we'll go ahead and say the global config here is equal to the same thing, right? And we'll pass down true there as well. So that's great. Now we have both configurations. So now we can do a combine, and we'll use array merge, right? So we'll merge both of these arrays. So the way it works is from right to left, right? So whatever the base array is, this environment config, we can have the same variables in both configs, right? But from right to left, or left to right, it'll load this, then it'll load that. But anything in here that is defined in here will override So it will just simply override what's over here. That's great. That's exactly what we want. So, but we still need to pass that back into back down as an object. Right now it's an array. So how do we do that? Well, I mean, there's an way we can cast that, but it could be a multi-dimensional array. So casting it won't necessarily work. So the easiest way to do that is actually to do a JSON encode and then decode that again, right? So we'll come over here and we'll say self loaded configs, right? And we'll go ahead and say JSON encode of this combined config, right? So now we have just a JSON string, but we need to decode it. So we'll do a JSON decode. I mean, and this is not the most optimal way to do that, but it's the quickest and easiest way to get that back into an object, right? So now if we come over here to our page and we hit refresh, we still get our variable here. If we look at our Docker file, or sorry, our Docker compose, our mode is dev. If we look at live, the username is being defined there. If we look here, and some name, right? So if we look at live and we save that, I want to go ahead and do a var dump of the whole thing over here. So some name and some password. So here's some name, some password. We're in live, that should be some other name. So I may have actually done this the complete opposite of what I needed to do. So I'm going to go ahead and switch these variables around and see what happens. Right? So if I come over here, now I have some dev name and some other password. That's great. Some dev name and some other password. So I may be passing dev down over here. Oh, yes I am. So some dev name, some other password, right? So if I come over here and hit refresh, oops, I messed that up. I need to get rid of that comma, and I was actually doing it right to begin with. So some dev name, some password. So here's that some dev name, and over here some password comes from that. So I can come over here and I can say, well, what if I want to override both? Right? And I can come over here and hit refresh. Now, it's loading both of those configuration files, as you can tell from looking at that. It's actually loading that configuration file, but it's also it's loading both. It's reading both, and so the next question is, what happens if I don't have this configuration file there, and I hit refresh? Well, I have that one there, and that's all it can load. That's all we can do. We give the developer what we can load. But if both of those are not there, and we do that, now it's trying to load an unknown configuration file. Great, that's exactly what we wanted. So without further ado, I thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. Please comment if you have any questions. Anyway, thank you guys for watching.